Have you ever stepped into a place that felt wrong? I'm not talking about the usual creepy basement or abandoned house. I mean a place that seems to exist outside of reality itself. It's a place where the air feels heavy, the lights buzz just a little too loudly, and every instinct in your body screams that you shouldn't be there. Maybe it's a hallway that seems to stretch on forever, or a room that looks familiar but somehow isn't. If you've ever felt that sudden, inexplicable chill, you're not alone. There's an urban legend that's been haunting the internet for years: the Backrooms. Supposedly, if you knock lip out of reality, you'll find yourself in an endless maze of yellow-stained carpet, flickering fluorescent lights, and the constant hum of something unseen. It's a place where time doesn't work right, and escape is almost impossible. Most people think it's just a creepy story, a digital campfire tale. But what if it isn't? Tonight, I'm sharing 3 true stories from people who claim they've been there. These aren't just internet rumors. These are real accounts from people who say they slipped into another dimension and barely made it back. After hearing these, you'll never trust empty hallways again. I never thought of myself as the type to get spooked by an office building. I mean, I was just a temp, 23, broke, and grateful for any job that paid more than minimum wage. The place was one of those generic corporate towers downtown, all glass and steel on the outside, but inside it was just endless beige walls, gray carpet, and the constant hum of fluorescent lights. I'd only been there a week, and already the layout felt like a maze. That night, I was the last one left. My supervisor had dumped a stack of invoices on my desk at 4:45 and told me they needed to be entered by morning. I didn't complain. I just put in my earbuds, cranked up some lo-fi beats, and got to work. By the time I finished, it was almost midnight. The office was dead silent, except for the occasional creak of the building settling and the distant whir of the cleaning crew's vacuum. I packed up my stuff, slung my backpack over my shoulder, and headed for the elevators. That's when I realized I'd left my water bottle in the break room. I doubled back, following the familiar path, past the copy room, around the corner, down the hall. But when I turned the corner, the hallway didn't look right. It was longer than I remembered, and the lights seemed dimmer, almost yellow. I told myself I was just tired. I kept walking, counting the doors as I went. 1, 2, 3. Wait, wasn't the break room supposed to be right here? I stopped, turned around, and tried retracing my steps. But the hallway behind me looked different too. The exit sign that should have been above the door was gone. The hum of the lights grew louder, almost like static in my ears. Pulled out my phone to check the time. 12:07 a.m. No signal. I tried calling out, half expecting to hear the cleaning crew, but my voice just echoed back at me, swallowed by the empty corridors. I started walking faster, turning corners at random, hoping to find something familiar. But every hallway looked the same: identical beige walls, gray carpet, the same motivational posters about teamwork and synergy. That's when I heard footsteps. It's not mine. These were slow, deliberate, coming from somewhere just out of sight. I froze, heart pounding, and pressed myself against the wall. The footsteps stopped. I waited, barely breathing, then forced myself to keep moving. I tried every door I passed, but they were all locked or led to empty conference rooms that felt just as wrong as the hallways. Panic started to set in. I could feel sweat prickling on my skin, my breath coming in short, shallow bursts. I tried to remember the floor plan, but it was like my memory was slipping away, replaced by this endless loop of corridors and doors. I started running, not caring about the noise, just desperate to find an exit. The lights flickered overhead, casting long, warped shadows on the walls. Finally, I rounded a corner and saw the elevator just where it should have been. I sprinted for it, jabbing the button over and over until the doors slid open. I stepped inside, hit the lobby button, and held my breath as the elevator descended. When the doors opened, I practically ran out of the building, not stopping until I was outside in the cool night air. But as I stood there, gasping for breath, something felt off. The streetlights seemed too bright, the air too still. The city noises were muffled, distant, like I was hearing them through a thick pane of glass. I looked back at the building, half expecting to see someone watching me from the windows, but there was nothing. Just the empty, endless office behind me, and the uneasy feeling that I hadn't really made it back at all. It's one thing to feel lost and alone in a silent office after hours, with only your own footsteps echoing back at you. But what if you vanished from a place that should be impossible to get lost in? A place packed with people, noise, and bright lights. If you thought getting trapped in an endless office was bad, imagine disappearing from a crowded shopping mall with no one even noticing you're gone. I was 16 the first time I realized the world could just shift beneath your feet. It was a Saturday, and the mall was packed, music blaring from the food court, kids running past with shopping bags, the smell of pretzels and perfume mixing in the air. My friends and I were supposed to meet up at the arcade, but I ducked into a store to check out some sneakers. I texted them, "Be there in 5, and stepped back into the main corridor. That's when everything changed. At first, I thought maybe I'd taken a wrong turn. The crowds were gone. The music had faded into a low, distant hum. The bright lights overhead flickered, casting weird, stretched-out shadows on the floor. I spun around, expecting to see someone, anyone, but the hallway was empty. No shoppers, no security guards, not even the bored employees who usually stood by the entrances scrolling through their phones. I pulled out my phone to call my friends, but there was no signal, not even Wi-Fi. I tried retracing my steps, but the stores I'd just passed were gone, replaced by blank glass storefronts with nothing inside. The only sound was the squeak of my sneakers on the tile and the faint mechanical buzz of the lights. I started walking faster, calling out for my friends. My voice echoed back at me, weirdly distorted, like the mall was swallowing the sound. I passed a directory and stopped, hoping to get my bearings. But the map was just a blur of colors and lines, no store names, no "you are here" dot. I felt a cold wave of panic wash over me. I tried to remember the way to the food court, thinking maybe everyone had just moved there for some event. But every hallway I took seemed to loop back on itself. I'd pass the same empty bench, the same broken vending machine, over and over. The architecture started to get strange. Hallways that should have ended at a wall just kept going, curving in impossible ways. Some doors were too small, others stretched up to the ceiling. I even saw an escalator that led straight into a blank wall. That's when I caught a glimpse of something moving, a shadow, just at the edge of my vision. I spun around, heart pounding, but there was nothing there. I told myself it was just my imagination, but every time I turned a corner, I felt like I was being watched. Sometimes I'd hear footsteps behind me, soft and shuffling, but when I looked, the corridor was empty. I don't know how long I wandered. My phone said it was only a few minutes, but it felt like hours. My legs ached, and my throat was dry. I started to wonder if I'd ever get out. That's when I saw the fire exit, a red door at the end of a long, narrow hallway. I ran for it, slammed the bar, and burst outside. But instead of the mall parking lot, I was standing in an alley I didn't recognize. The sky was dark, and the streetlights buzzed overhead. I checked my phone again. 3 hours had passed. My friends had blown up my messages, asking where I was, if I was okay. I had no idea how to explain what happened. All I knew was that the mall ID left behind was NT, the one ID entered. And sometimes, when I walk past that place, I swear I see that same red door, just waiting for me to open it again. It's terrifying enough to lose your way in a place you thought you knew, to feel reality slip just out of reach, like you're being erased from the world you belong to. But what if you didn't just get lost? What if you were taken somewhere you were never meant to see? The next story isn't just unsettling, It's the kind that lingers long after the lights go out. I've worked as a night shift janitor for most of my adult life. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills, and I've always liked the quiet. There's something peaceful about empty hallways and the soft echo of your own footsteps. But after what happened last winter, I don't think I'll ever feel safe in an empty building again. The place was an old apartment complex on the edge of town, the kind with creaky floors and peeling wallpaper. Most nights, I'd just plug in my headphones, mop the lobby, and make my rounds. But that night, something felt off from the moment I clocked in. The air was heavy, almost humid, and the lights in the hallway flickered more than usual. I told myself it was just the old wiring, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Around 2 a.m., I was cleaning the third floor when I noticed a door at the end of the hallway. It was painted the same dull beige as the walls, but I'd never seen it before. I'd worked there for months, I knew every nook and cranny, but this door was new. Or maybe it had always been there and I'd just never noticed. Either way, it was slightly ajar, and a strange yellow light spilled out from the crack. Curiosity got the better of me. I set my mop aside and pushed the door open. The first thing that hit me was the smell. Old musty carpet and something faintly chemical, like cleaning fluid that had soaked in for years. The room was huge, way bigger than anything that should have fit inside the building. The walls were covered in yellow wallpaper, stained and peeling in places. The carpet was the same sickly yellow, dotted with dark, mysterious stains. Overhead, fluorescent lights buzzed and flickered, casting everything in a jaundiced glow. I stepped inside, calling out, "Hello." My voice sounded flat, swallowed by the endless space. There was no furniture, no windows, just endless rows of yellow-lit corridors stretching out in every direction. I turned to leave, but the door was gone. In its place was another hallway, identical to the one I'd just entered. Panic started to creep in. I tried to retrace my steps, but every turn led me deeper into the maze. The hum of the lights grew louder, vibrating in my bones. Sometimes I'd hear other sounds, soft footsteps, a distant cough, the faint rustle of fabric. I'd spin around, heart racing, but there was never anyone there. The air felt thick, almost syrupy, and every breath tasted stale. I started marking the walls with my keys, desperate to find a way out. But every time I looked back, the marks were gone, the wallpaper smooth and unbroken. My phone was useless. No signal, no battery, just a black screen reflecting my own terrified face. I tried to keep track of time, but the lights never changed, and my watch had stopped ticking. At some point, I found a room that was different. The carpet was soaked, squishing under my shoes. The walls were covered in handprints, some small, some impossibly large. I heard a low, guttural moan echoing from somewhere nearby, and I ran, not caring where I was going, just needing to get away. The corridors twisted and turned, sometimes narrowing so much I had to squeeze through sideways, other times opening into vast, empty chambers that seemed to stretch on forever. I don't know how long I wandered. It felt like days. My legs ached, my throat was raw from calling for help, and my mind started to slip. I'd see flashes of movement in the corners of my eyes, shadows that darted away when I looked directly at them. Sometimes I'd hear whispering, voices just out of reach, saying things I couldn't quite understand. I started to wonder if I'd ever existed outside this place at all. Eventually, I collapsed on the carpet, too exhausted to move. The hum of the lights was deafening, vibrating through my skull. I closed my eyes, wishing for it all to end. When I opened them again, I was lying on the cold concrete floor of the building's basement. My mop was beside me, and the morning sun was just starting to filter through the tiny window. For a moment, I thought it had all been a nightmare. But when I stood up, I felt something scratchy in my shoe. I pulled it off and found a single, bright yellow carpet fiber clinging to my sock. I never found that door again. I asked the building manager, but he just looked at me like I was crazy. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear that low hum in my dreams. And every time I walk down an empty hallway, I can't help but wonder if the yellow room is still waiting for me, just out of sight, behind a door that shouldn't exist. 3 stories. 3 ordinary people who stepped into places that shouldn't exist. Places that felt wrong in ways they couldn't explain. Maybe the Backrooms are just an urban legend. A creepy story we tell ourselves to make sense of those moments when reality slips and the world feels unfamiliar. Or maybe, just maybe, there are cracks in the world, and sometimes, if you're unlucky, you fall right through. What happened to these people could happen to anyone. A late night at the office, a quick trip to the mall, a routine shift in an old building, normal moments that turned into something impossible. If you've ever experienced a glitch in reality, a place that didn't feel quite right, I want to hear your story. Share it in the comments below. Who knows how many of us have brushed up against the edge of something we can explain. And next time you find yourself alone in a strange hallway, pay attention. You might not be as alone as you think.